And this is Dave Duford here from Final Expense Agent Mentor at feagentmentor.com, and today we have got a great topic to talk about, one that as my tenure in the final expense training business grows, I'm very excited and happy to be the provider of some incredibly important information most brand new agents are not aware of, and it's the proverbial devil in the details when it comes to final expense agencies. And stuff like this is what gives this industry a bad name, and the purpose of this presentation is to give you an overview of what is out there, what to look for as a new final expense agent, and the contracts that agencies give you, so that you are better informed and the wiser when it comes to picking the best agency, not just for the short term but for the long term, and making sure that you're not getting involved in final expense relationships that are ultimately bad and hazardous for your health. So this is the overview here. We're going to talk about who I am. I'm going to give you my legal disclaimer, talk about final expense agency contracts in general, and then specifically go into two sample contracts to where I give you an overview on what is said and what it means as an agent, and then summarize with what I feel to be the ideal agency contract. Okay, so my name is David Duford. Of course, I am the owner and operator of Final Expense Agent Mentor. The website is feagentmentor.com, and I specialize in working with new agents who are either licensed and brand new licensed, or experienced agents but new to final expense, and focusing on field training, phone training, and aspiring final expense agents to succeed in the final expense business. My focus has always been on one-on-one training, mentorship, consultation to train these agents into intermediate and advanced, but most importantly self-sufficient, long-term successful final expense experts. And one thing that makes me different than a lot of the marketers that you'll see out there is I actually personally sell in the field weekly. All of my training is based off of personal first-hand experience, experiencing the ups and the downs of final expense, and providing vision and direction, in which actually is based on the real world. So a lot of what I have to say is more applicable, and especially in this video, it's going to be extremely applicable to those agents who have no idea what they're possibly get into. Now, this is the legal disclaimer. Of course, I am only a final expense agent. The information provided is not intended to be consumed as legal counsel or advice, but understand it is purely informational in scope. This is not designed to be specific legal counsel. Alright, this is just information. You use it to the extent that you feel necessary. Please consult a professional licensed attorney for any legal questions regarding final expense agency contracts. Again, I'm not a professional. I'm just an agency operator and a final expense agent, expressing just some basic views of what I see out in the field, nothing more. Now, with the legal disclaimer behind us, let's get into the final expense contract discussion. So first of all, final expense agency contracts are used to reduce legal and financial risk exposure to the agency. Look, contracts aren't necessarily a bad thing, okay? Contracts are designed to protect both users and to limit what each person involved in a contract can and cannot do. It names specific rules of procedure so that there's no confusion on how the relationship is supposed to go. However, that is the idea or essence, but contracts, of course, can be tricky, and they can be designed, as they often are, to give one party leverage over the other. And in the case of final expense agency contracts that agents sign, this usually is the case. They're designed to penalize agents in many cases and exude more control from the agent to the agency. And understand, you've got to treat this stuff cautiously when signing any kind of contract, and that's why I'm doing this video, just to give you a heads up on what the big guys are doing so that you understand what you're looking at when you're presented a contract. Alright, so the first one here, Final Expense Agency Contract 1, in quotes, the company named after a president. So, as all of you know, if you've listened to my videos, I commonly refer to a company named after a president. It should be obvious as to which one I'm talking to, but maybe it's not, because there are a lot of companies named after a president. But if you've done any due diligence and final expense, you'll know exactly who I'm speaking to. So what we're going to talk about with this particular contract is what's called vesting. All right, vesting is what happens when you sell a policy. You basically own the rights to the renewals and commission off of that policy indefinitely, as long as it's in force. Well, with the company named after a president, they stipulate in their contract that vesting does not occur until 2 years after the agency agreement is in effect. Understanding more that this contract further clarifies that compensation payable to under the contract will be forfeited if the agency contract is not vested. Okay, so what does all this legal mumbo-jumbo mean? So the takeaway point here is that if you terminate the contract, or if you are terminated, that agency owns all future income to the company. Now, it becomes the company's. Most likely, probably your direct report, your upline that trained you or will train you. So here's some food for thought. So first of all, what if you're terminated in month 23 of the business, all right? You've got a lot of business on books after 23 years. What happens to that commission that you haven't received yet? I would wager and say that it will not be yours. That commission, those renewals, all that stuff becomes the ownership of the agency. And it's important to understand that you signed off on this. There's nothing that you could legally do to get out of this. Or even probably more typical, what if you hate the final expense business? We all think we're going to get involved in this business and succeed, but many people just don't like it for whatever reason. Well, even if you did 6 months and you hate it and you want to move on, something else happens. Well, you're terminated. Those renewals, those commissions you haven't received become the agency's. So what happens is that your effort is shortchanged. You don't get that full policy like independent agencies do, and independent agents get. They get the full commission, the renewals, the whole thing. Well, you give that up when you sign these contracts, okay? It's bullshit. And most people, again, new agents don't have any idea. And then add insult to injury on top of that, you're not getting a reduction in the lead cost you had. You still owe the full lead price, even though those renewals and commissions not earned by you yet become the agencies or the uplines. So this is really important. This is one of the biggest things that this big agency does to get the most money possible. Okay, that's why commonly amongst final expense agents, we all talk and say that, you know, final expense in this particular company, the managers make the big money, not the agents, and this is the #1 reason why. Now, moving on to this next point, final expense agency contract 2. This is with a very popular, high Google ranking national final expense agency. Again, I don't give names out to just protect myself from any type of legal confrontations that may arise. But this is one that if you've done any kind of due diligence, if you've found Final Expense Agent Mentor off of Google, you've probably run across these guys. Again, they look great on the surface, but underneath it, let's talk about the problem. So I jokingly call their contract their first rights. If you know anything about medieval times and what nobles would exact, I can think of the movie, what movie was it? Braveheart. The concept of first rights, where the king or its nobles has first rights over when someone gets married, and then, you know, possibly, you know, doing you know what. I guess I should leave it at that. But the idea is that the first rights concept, as we'll get into, is that this agency owns you in a sense when you sign a contract, and they prevent you in the future from moving on if the relationship isn't advantageous in your on your side of the table. So let's go into specifics here. So first of all, if you terminate your agency contract with this agency, you must return all leads and any referrals gained to the agency, including from third-party associations like lead vendors and etc. So this may sound reasonable on the surface, okay? But this particular agency does not pay for your leads. Now, if they paid for your leads, they own the leads, yeah, you should return them. I get that. That makes sense. However, the takeaway point here is that you pay for your leads full retail, okay? They simply referred you to those lead relationships. But what they're insinuating is that you have to send not just the leads you paid full retail for, but also referrals that are generated by policyholders who were sold policies through this particular agency. So what they're saying is that you have no right over something that you paid full retail for and that you own. It just seems a little ridiculous. Can you see where I'm coming from? They say they own your referrals and your leads, even though you paid full price for them. It just is ridiculous. And that referral was gained based off of agent trust and not. Now, can they go after this stuff? I don't know if they can. But the fact that they're putting this stuff in a contract is kind of bogus, if you ask me. Now, moving on. Same company here, guys. Just kind of more junk that you got to be concerned about. Moving on in this contract, agents cannot associate with other life insurance companies without prior written consent from the agency, even if the agency does not offer the carrier. Okay, you are a chattel. All right, what chattel means is you're property. You're a slave to this company. That means if this particular agency, let's say you find a great carrier or you're selling some other product, okay, that has loose associations, maybe it doesn't even offer final expense, but you want to sell a term product instead. Well, what they're saying here is that you have to get permission. They have first rights on you. It doesn't matter if they don't even have the company. You have to get permission from them. Well, you mean me, an independent agent, has to get permission from you to get a carrier that maybe particularly isn't even offered? It's bogus. Why do I have to ask you permission? What did you do for me? That's kind of what I think. Moving on through here, and if you leave this agency, you agree not to associate with any current or past carriers that the agency was associated with without the express permission, written permission of that agency for 1 year. So if you work 6 months and you quit, not only are they saying current relationships you can't associate with that maybe you didn't even have a contract with, but also the past ones, defined as, if you read on here, anything that occurred within the past 2 years, even if they're not a current carrier. So what they're saying is that if you decide to leave them and, you have a falling out or something bad happens, well, they own you for the next year on current and past relationships. And so, again, how do you know what's your former agencies that they've been associated with? What if you've had a bad experience with this agency and they don't do their job? They're still going to exact this clause on you. I mean, really? 1 year, you can't move on? Now, all of this sounds ridiculous until you read the consequences. You can think, well, okay, it's just a contract, who cares? You can just avoid this stuff, right? How can they fact check this? But they can. This is where it gets ugly. The consequences for breaking this rules is that the agency contract stipulates that all future commissions and renewals become the property of the agency. Okay, guys? If you leave and you associate with a former carrier that you had no idea about and they find out, you're toast, man. All that money that's coming in, or that would have come in, you have signed off saying that they can have permission to take those commissions, and renewals too. You have forfeited that to the carrier. Think about that. Think about that. That's ridiculous. That they own you when you come aboard. You are a captive agent to their agency. They own you, and the sad thing is that this particular agency presents themselves as the aw shucks, we're nice, great people, and we're good at what we do. We're family oriented, and we're all this and that. And when you look at the contracts, they just screw agents over. I can understand protecting, certain, intellectual property, but this particular contract is going to board you in and prevent you from running a final expense business in effect. Because, again, we have no idea what former agencies are. They don't tell you that. And they're making you basically kiss the ring before they give you permission to do anything. And here's the thing, they can catch you doing this, guys. That's what I was trying to get to. All an agency or an agent has to do is go on to DOI for the state and check the public records to see where the licenses are. It's all very simple. I do it all the time. I do it for myself. It can be done. It doesn't cost anything. And all these people have to do at the home office is find you and see that you're associated with one particular carrier, and they check that you're not with them. Well, now you have broken the contract, and now your full renewals and commissions are at risk, even if you've had a bad experience, even if you've been burned. And that's my point. Okay, this particular contract has no clauses in it if they screw you over. And to me, that's the very definition of what is wrong with these contracts. They are so one-sided and designed to screw you as an agent that how can you trust these agencies that put these contracts out without explaining this? Because you know they don't. They just throw it at you and want you to sign it as quickly as possible. Now, lastly, here's the deal. What is the ideal final expense agency contract? Well, first of all, the ideal situation is not to have to sign anything above and beyond the standard fair final expense carrier contract. Every carrier has a specific contract to sign. That makes sense. It's going to stipulate commissions, what happens if you get, what will lead to termination, commission levels, and so forth. That all makes sense, okay? But the ideal situation is there's nothing else beyond that, because the relationship between you and your upline or agency is very straightforward and based on trust. Look, the more disclaimers and contingencies, the more likely the agency is trying to leverage itself over you as an agent. And that's the thing. And you got to understand that these agencies make big-time dollars on their agents with these gotcha clauses. Okay, the company named after a president, that's how these agencies make a killing as managers, because they take over their renewal stream and they're not their commission that hasn't been earned yet. And that's the thing, is that this is so important to be totally aware of, because these decisions to work with somebody, as nice as they look out on the surface, as hard as they sell the 4-hour work week, blue sky potential to make millions in this business, as hard as they sell this stuff, they're basically getting out the short knives, the long knives. They're getting you in a situation where the long term will be extremely hazardous to your career, and it's just wrong. So here's the thing. Remember, the best agency to get involved with is the one that has both short-term and long-term advantages, okay? I've talked about this in many of my videos. What you want to do when you get involved in this business is have the agency that does both, that gives you the short-term advantage of training, but also the long-term ability to grow and be involved with an organization that cares and takes care of you, okay? You don't want to sacrifice either the long-term or the short-term for one or the other. You want to make sure that you get both if you can make it happen. And there are agencies like mine at Final Expense Agent Mentor where I don't have anybody sign a contract above and beyond what the carrier signs. You know exactly our relationship, how it works, and what will cause for commission advances, and how I deal with my agents, and that's how I want to do business. I want our relation to be simple, straightforward, and transparent, with no bullshit gotcha clauses. I'm sick and tired of it, and that's why I did this video, because I could not believe what these agencies will do to screw their agents over, because they're, in a way, banking on you to fail so they can take over what you did and make your efforts and what you did to earn your money their property. And you deserve better than being somebody's slave or a chattel. You need to be independent. You need to run this business like a business and not be captive to some agency that has leverage over you. It's not the right way to do it. My name is David Duford. Again, this is Final Expense Agent Mentor at feagentmentor.com. I really hope you like this video. This is an extremely important one, and I'm so glad I did it. If you have any questions, concerns, please leave me a comment down below. Give me a thumbs up or subscribe to my webpage or subscribe to my YouTube page, because I got lots of videos like this always coming out. And again, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you learned something important from this, and I hope some of you out there, I've saved your ass, because I'm telling you, you will get screwed if you're not careful in this business. Alright guys, take care.